Hi guys, today I'm going to start a mosaic, a stained glass mosaic, and I always start with a base. There's different shapes that you could get at your local hobby store, different sizes, different shapes, and today I'm going to start with a star shape because I have an order that would like to be on a star shape. And the first thing I do is get the star. I look to see what side is better. The better side I'm going to leave for the back. The worst side, if there is one, I shall cover up with this adhesive tape. Before I start, I make a hole because I put a cord in the holes for hanging. So I am going to, on the good side, which will be the back, drill a hole. It doesn't have to be exact, but if you, and I'll put on my little safety protective gear here, if you want to be precise, go ahead and measure, but I'm just going to drill a hole through here. Then on the bad side, over here, see this is all smooth, I'm going to start putting this mesh tape covering as much of the wood as I can. Let me show you here. And as close to the edge but not hanging over the edge as we can. And then I'll cut off this edge. You don't want anything sticking out because once it's grouted, it's going to be sticking out and it's going to be an eyesore. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this entire piece with this tape, and I'll show you the finished product. Alrighty, I'm putting the last piece on. It doesn't have to be perfect, but what this sticky tape does, and I did buy this sticky tape in the grout section of the hardware store, is when I glue the glass or the beads or whatever it is that I am putting on my mosaic, it helps it to stick better. You can also do something like take a Dremel tool or a file or some sandpaper and just make it a little bit less smooth so it'll stick better. And there's my hole that we will not grout that part. We will not bead or glue glass over that part because, again, that's where we will put the cord for hanging the mosaic once it's done. Today I'm going to make a mosaic themed with children around the world. I found these cute little beads that I like to glue. They're buttons that I like to glue onto the mosaics and grout around them. And I'll show you how to prep the. So I've taken the buttons out of the package, as you can see here, and they have these little hooks on them so that they can be sewn to fabric. What I do is I just use wire snippers and I cut off the little hooks. And after I cut the hooks, I use a Dremel tool to grind down the little pieces that are sticking up. You want it to be as flat as you can before you glue it onto the mesh atop the wood base. Alright, I have ground down all the backs off the little buttons, and you see that I have glasses on, so we don't want anything flying and hitting in our eyes. What I'm going to do now is find the center point because I'm going to glue these buttons and also an inspirational quote with some letters onto the mosaic. So I want to find the center. And I'm going to draw some lines on the board, the side with the mesh. So I put some lines and placed the buttons just to see how much space they're going to take once I glue them onto the mosaic. And I want to put an affirmation or a quote that says, take care of each other. And to me, that would mean taking care of the other humans and taking care of the earth. I have two size letter beads. One would be similar to a Scrabble tile. I really use bananagrams. They don't have numbers on them, but they're going to be too large to write down take care of each other. So I'm going to use these little beads that kids use, lettered beads for bracelets. Okay, I have my letters picked out. Take care of each other right there. And I'm going to put take care of kind of in a circular manner, each other in a circular manner at the bottom of the star. So what I want to do, I have a line, a line, a line, a line, and I want to make sure that it's balanced here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because you got to count the space, 9, 10, 11, 12. So between 6 and 7 is going to be the middle, 5, 6, 7. So I know that the C and the A are going to go here, and I'll place the rest of the beads. And then same for the bottom, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So between 5 and 6 is going to be the middle here. So this one's going to go on the side of the line. And I'm going to use a glue called Weld Bond. It's an adhesive. Hold on, let me show you. Weld Bond. You'll find it in your hardware store, maybe like at Walmart, I don't know. The beads you could get at Walmart. The little buttons you could also get at a hardware store, craft store. But what I do is I take a little bit of the Weld Bond and I put it in a jar, so I'm not using it all at once. It will dry out. It's like Elmer's glue, and I add a little bit of water at a time. So it's like this consistency. And then I will start to glue. And then we see how it goes from there. So here's the CA. Well, actually what I need to do is glue these guys first. These need to be in place first. Sometimes what will happen, because they're beads and I ground off the button, sometimes they will break apart and you'll want to glue that part on as well. Each color is put on separately. So being this is the earth, I am going to put north on the top, south on the bottom. Then I'm going to glue this little girl. See that, make sure that her dress doesn't fall off. Up, see? So I'm going to put her here. The glue will come off once we grout and clean. So you don't have to worry too much about the glue getting on top of the pieces. And then I'm going to glue her dress on. It's all going to be grouted down, so that's good. So I'm going to do that with all the kids and then all the letters. So I'm going to put C, A right here, and then I'm going to glue the rest of the letters on, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, I have glued the take care of each other with the beads onto the mesh atop the wood star. I glued each of these buttons that have been ground down. The clothes, I took off the kids because they would fall off if I didn't glue. It was easy to pop off, and I don't want it popping off once I'm done and I'm grouted. It's all grouted. So it is glued on as well. It's still loose. You will be able to adjust 20 minutes to a half an hour. It'll stay pretty wet once it's glued down. So if you want to change it, you can change it. What I've done is, because there's a lot of color on their clothes, I'm going to use an assortment of glass. I have little chips here of transparent and opal little chips. But what I'm going to start with are my bigger pieces of green and blue and yellow. And in the middle, where the earth and the kids are, I'm going to put mirror, because otherwise I think too much color is going to be too busy. So as far as where you can get glass, if you have a hobby store in your area, you'll probably be able to get sheets of glass. You can also try to use tile. I happen to be a stained glass artist. I have lots of scraps, and because I live in Hawaii, it costs more to ship over here than for the sheet of glass. So I cannot waste. So, but anyway, at the end of this video, I will share with you my website where I sell kits with different colors of glass, with different shapes of wood backings, different kinds of beads. Again, the buttons I get it from Ace Hardware. You could get them on Amazon. And because I don't stock the little buttons, I just get enough for me to use on my mosaics. So let me start by finding. I'm just going to make an assortment of color and glue each piece. Now I have to remember there's a hole here. I do not want to glue the hole because that's where my cord is going to go through. I happen to like to glue as I find a piece. If I were to place all the pieces and then pick them up to glue them, they would move and I would go nuts. See, I have a little triangle, so I'm going to use the triangle for the edge of the star, put a little glue on it, stick it on, and I'm going to do this with all different kinds of colors, okay? And then I will show you my piece once it's all glued together. Oops, there I am. Okay, this is where I am so far. It's getting dark here, so I'm going to have to call it a night. But what I've done, and it's still wet, is I've glued together, I missed this spot here, but the outline, I leave a little spot here. You don't want to be cut by the sharp edges of the glass. If you're afraid that you will get cut, I suggest that you wear a pair of gloves. I have not ground down these pieces of glass like I normally do when I'm doing a stained glass panel or a sun catcher. But what I thought I'd better do is to make a circle here before I start filling in the rest of these areas with colored glass. And again, I'd like to use mirror in here, so I'm going to start with my little chippies of mirrored scrap, and I will show you how it goes. Hi, you ready to do some grouting? What I have is a ready-made mosaic. I have glued scraps of glass onto the mosaic, which already that I had put adhesive mesh tape on, and that's in a previous episode. And I have put beads on here with letters for my quote, and some buttons that I have clipped off the button piece and ground down so it would be flat. I've glued this all together and let it dry for at least 24 hours. And one way you can tell is if you have transparent glass like this one, you could not see the glue. The glue is dry. Okay? So what I have done is I have mixed up some grout, and I just use grout from the hardware store. And I've mixed it with a bit of water. I followed the instructions and stirred it up. And you can see it's kind of, well, this one might be just a little bit dry. I won't be able to tell until I get it on. But kind of like the consistency of a thick oatmeal. Okay, mud. So what I'm going to do, you can wear gloves. As you can see, I don't manicure. I don't care. I just like to have hands on. So I am going to take, let me fix this for you guys. I am going to take some grout, and I start in the middle where my beads are, my letters, and I go out. Okay? Now with glass that I'm using, and there's scraps of glass and then they have not been ground down, they are sharp. So you can get cut, especially these edges here. I try not to get too close to the edge, but they are still very sharp, and they will cut. I will go and to as close to the edge as I can, making sure I fill in all the holes. There are holes you can see on the back that I've drilled. Those are where my the cord is going to go for hanging once it's done. So once I get toward the edge, I make sure that the edges have grout on them as well, so it's finished. And I also, because this is a different colored grout, it's not like that antique white or the color of the wood, I make sure that this all has a little bit of color. I'm sure that there's some dye or something in there that makes it this color. So I'll notice it at the end on the back. I can see that it's getting a little bit stained. But I want to make sure that the edges are all covered nicely as well. Okay. And then once I get that all done, I will start smoothing and taking off any excess. Oh, right on the computer. Let me get that last side here so I can show you the complete process. It's really not that lengthy for this size of a piece. You can take longer, especially on your first one. You know, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to be able to fix things as we go. And so anyway, I just want to make sure all the cracks are filled in. All the letter spaces are filled in. And then I will start removing some of the excess grout. Again, I want to build up these edges because even once they're sealed at the end, if you knock them around, they're going to come off. So I just want to have a build up there so it's a little bit more strong. Take that big chunk off. And if you need to add more, you add more. It's wet right now. It does dry pretty quickly. So I'm going to do a couple of more since I got ample grout to do a few mosaics. And knowing how much to use, it just takes practice and trial and error. I could probably do, three completely completely grouted mosaics this size, like 6 by 5, with 1 scoop of grout. So once I do this, I'm gonna let it sit for 10 minutes before I do anything else, okay? So we'll come back and I'll show you what I do after. See you in a bit. Oh, my hands are so. Okay guys, I have put the grout on some mosaics. I was able to grout 4 rectangular mosaics with just over a scoop of this particular grout, and I've let them sit for at least 5 minutes, not too long, because I want to clean them off before they dry. And what I do is I take a wet sponge and I go toward the middle. I don't want to be knocking off any of the grout on the sides. Turn your sponge around if you need to. And it's cleaning up pretty nice. And actually I like this color grout, this kind of grout, because it doesn't stick in the letters. A lot of times I'll have to spend a lot of time cleaning out the letters so that you could read what they are. So I will do this. Okay, so that's my first sponge, and then I got the other half of the sponge. And I'm gonna lift this up and very carefully, almost at this kind of angle, just to clean off the wood there. I don't want to take the grout off, but I want to smooth the grout on the sides just a little bit. I don't know if you can see it's smoother without leaving gaps, okay? So I'm going to just clean this off at an angle, gently. Then I'm going to turn it to the back. And on my back, I happen to wood burn my name website on to the back, because these I'm going to put up for sale, okay, on my website. And I'm going to take, if I have a toothpick, hold on, no toothpick, but I have this little pick here. There's my holes. I want to make sure that I could see my holes from the front. And I'm going to take a clean part of the sponge and clean off as much of this grout. See how it's already, the dye or whatever, the coloring in the grout has turned the wood a different color. So I want to not make it stand out so much. And it might go into the grain of the wood, which is all cool. It looks like it's been stained. There's a piece I don't want to play with. Okay, so back and sides are done. I'm going to take this. Actually, I'm going to make sure that the hole on this side goes through. We don't want to close up the holes. Then I'm going to clean this off a little bit. Okay, I'll have to do that hole a little bit more again. This is still okay. You use a sponge. I just like to use my hands. Doesn't bother me that my hands are all cut up and dry. But anyway, the more you clean this now, the less you'll have to clean in the next phase. We're going to let this dry. It says for like 3 days, but this is not going to be walked on. This is just going to be hanging. There's a little fire hydrant bead here. I want to clean it off a little bit so I don't have to scrape it off later so much in that dried phase. The dog house is pretty clean. The bone, the dog paws are clean. So this looks pretty good. It looks pretty smooth. All the little gaps in here are closed. I have a little bit of extra grout that's still wet. If you have any cracks that weren't filled in. You want to fill it in now before you throw your grout away, because you don't want to be making up another batch of grout. And if I were using white grout, I would clean out my letters. Right now, it's just a little bit easier while it's in the wet phase. And then I would take the sponge and clean them out as much as I can. Again, doing it now is easier than doing it when it's dry. And that's it. So what I'm going to do is, because this is not a stepping stone, it's just going to be hanging up on the wall, I will be able to let this dry for 24 hours. Tomorrow, I will show you how to do the last cleanup and the sealing. We'll put a sealant on it, 2 coats of sealant, so that it is water repellent, and we'll almost be done. And this is what we have so far. Alrighty. Okay, now we're on the section of sealing our dried mosaic. The grout is dry. I've cleaned it up a little bit, removed all the powdery stuff off of here, off the top. We will clean it again, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I use like little sticks, popsicle sticks, manicure sticks to get some of the pieces off the edge. Anyway, I have 2 kinds of sealer here. I prefer the spray-on one, but with my kits, I'm not able to send that. So this is what you'll be getting, is a liquid rather than the aerosol. With this liquid, we just paint it on. Oops, hold on. There's a little security piece here. Take that off and paint it on your piece. And you don't have to be wasting it by putting it on big chunks of glass. But, you know, just make sure that all the grout gets covered, okay? Now with the spray, same thing. You could just, you know, you just spray it on, just making sure that all the grout gets covered. Very little is necessary to cover all the grout, the cement part. Let it dry. On the liquid one, you let it dry for 5 minutes, wipe it off, and let it dry for another 30 minutes before you add the second coat. I put 2 coats. It makes it water resistant, not water repellent. If you put it in a tub of water, the grout will eventually get soft and come off. The spray kind, and both of these I bought at a hardware store, says to spray it on and then allow 2 hours between applications. So keep that in mind depending on which one you're using. And so I'll go ahead and do this. Let it dry a bit. Now I have both, so I'll wait 2 hours. And then I'll redo it, clean it up. I will add some cord through the hole that I left, and it'll be ready to go. Ready to hang on your wall, free hanging, or gifted or sold. So have fun, you guys. That's the last part.